We'd like to thank Arcat for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak. Your boss asks you to put together the CAD details for your firm's next project. What's your next step? Is it using basic internet search only to find outdated or incompatible details? Grabbing the details from the last project and hoping they fit?
There is an easier, faster, less stressful way to get the information you need. Arcat.com. Arcat has over 15,000 CAD details based on real manufacturers' products and a powerful search engine to find the right one you need. Best of all, it's free.
You don't even have to register. Just go to arcat.com. That's ARCAT.com and start downloading the CAD details you need. And thanks to Arcat for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak.
Welcome to Archispeak, the podcast that talks about what it's like to work in the profession of architecture.
Welcome to episode 140 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
Hey guys, so this weekend I went on a road trip. Just put about 900 miles on the car.
And on your body.
We went out to Arizona, and which is not too far, about 5 hours to Phoenix from here. And we got an Airbnb for the weekend and did some architectural touring. So I posted a few pictures up on Instagram, and I guess I'll put a link in the show notes for that. But the cool thing was it was just kind of we actually went out there for another purpose. It didn't work out, so we ended up just having more time on our hands than we thought. So we went and got some tickets for Taliesin West, which I haven't been to. What was kind of cool was this was kind of a repeat of a piece of a road trip I did when I was in college. I think it was third year of my architectural undergraduate, which I don't have a graduate degree, so I don't know why I said it like that. But I have just a B-Arch. And when I was third year, Cal Poly, we went on this southwestern road trip. And the first couple stops were in this area. We ended up going all the way out to Chaco Canyon.
Oh, Chaco Canyon. Love that place.
Which is ancient Pueblo ruins, and it's super cool. My wife and I went back there when we were dating, actually, just on a cool road trip. But that's where we ended up on that trip. But we went through Arcosanti, Cosanti, Taliesin West, and we went out through Santa Fe and Albuquerque all the way out to Chaco Canyon and back, which was super cool back then with all of my classmates. And now I took my wife and I and two of our kids out over the weekend, and we just did kind of the short version, the quicker loop, the 900-mile loop instead of the 3,000-mile loop or whatever it is. But it was so awesome out there. It was just perfect weather, and so we were trading pictures back and forth. Cormac and I were at least about the different things that we were doing over the weekend. So he was posting cool pictures of the car shows that he was going to, and I was posting architectural shots. So
I never felt like I could one-up you, though, because you'd post, I'm doing
I wasn't
this.
posting that many, so.
No, but you were posting like, I'm doing this, and, this beautiful sprawling picture of Taliesin West, and I'm like, oh, yeah, well, here's a picture.
Here's a Pantera.
Here's a Pantera and a Countach, and actually, there's a Lamborghini Miura right next to it. So,
oh man,
I mean,
those are beautiful.
They're gorgeous cars, but I don't know. I think you won.
Well, both inspiring. Let's say that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, automobile design is one of those things that I think we should talk more about as architects, because there's so much going on there, but yet the overall idea is very simple and beautiful. So,
oh yeah,
it's cool. And Neil, what were you doing this weekend?
Mowing his grass.
I should have mowed the lawn. I didn't. Oh, what did I do this weekend? Not a whole lot, actually.
Nothing remarkable. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I guess I don't know where to start. I guess I'll just start with the first place that we went, which was Taliesin. So we got up and found breakfast, and Phoenix is enormous. I mean, talk about sprawl. It's huge. We were in Scottsdale, so we went to Old Town Scottsdale for breakfast, and then we headed out to Taliesin. We had a 10 o'clock tour, so we got there about 9:30. And, it sits on the brow of a hill. I mean, that was kind of Frank Lloyd Wright's thing, right? It wasn't like build on top of the hill. It was use the hill, blend into the hill. I mean, that's the purpose of organic architecture to him. It was blending in with your surroundings, using local materials. And so it's just this gorgeously sited complex. They've got about 40,000 square feet. And I guess I'll say now that if you ever get the chance to go. It's an amazing place. And, you really can't go wrong unless you go in the dead of summer, probably, with the weather out there. If you're from the Northeast, you know that you can get away from that cold, wintry, which hopefully you guys are just getting out of now with the time of year, right? But it's been kind of a brutal winter for the Northeast. So there's a lot of snowbirds down in Arizona.
Yeah, we just hit our high here, and I'm just in the Mid-Atlantic. Of 68 degrees today was the highest it's been in a while. Welcome.
Yeah, so on our trip, it hit 101 in April on our trip. So that was kind of like out at the border near the Colorado River, between California and Arizona. But it's crazy. It's April. It's over 100 degrees. I got a photo of that because it was just like, what the heck's going on? It's going to be a brutal summer. So
yeah.
Anyway, the weather was really nice out there in Arizona, so we weren't complaining.
They don't call it the desert for nothing.
Yeah, seriously. So they spent back in when Taliesin was being built and when they were occupying it, they were there half the year. So they weren't there during the summer. They were in Chicago at the other Taliesin, right? So they were smart enough to not stay there either. But it's just an amazing place. There's about 40,000 square feet. It's all for the most part single story. There's some two story a little bit, but just this amazing view out over Scottsdale, and it's perfectly sited. They've got their own well water, so that they basically, the tour guide was selling Frank Lloyd Wright as a genius in so many ways. He was able to find water when nobody else knew there was water there, but. Which may or may not be true. I don't know, but it was a neat story, and our docent knew so much. You can tell that he was definitely a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, and he had definitely, shall we say, drank the Kool-Aid. It was all of the great things and none of the bad things about Frank Lloyd Wright, and it was just neat because my wife had never been there. The kids obviously had never been there, and it was the same tour. We just basically did the basic tour, but it's about 90 minutes, and it was, you get to see so much of Taliesin West, and you don't get to go in the drafting studio with the basic tour. And they actually, I don't think that I know they don't allow photography ever in the drafting studio, and there might be a tour or two that go in there, but it costs more, and you have to go on the 3-hour tour to do that. So, and they're in session right now too. So, it's probably private to some extent. I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff going on in there that they just don't want to get out on social media or whatever, just because it's student work and there's students working in there. So, it would have been cool. I have never been in the drafting studio, but this was the same tour that I did when I was in college. And you get to go in the office, and you get to go in their living room, and this cool space called the Kiva, which is kind of like a dark meeting room, and the cabaret and the theater. So there's so many spaces you could visit there. But I just have to say, overall, it was so inspiring. And I don't want to give a play-by-play of every single space, but the way that everything is thought about, and it's pretty well preserved at this point. And they're definitely going back and replacing some of the wood with steel at this point now, so that it just lasts for future generations. There's definitely some deterioration going on. I mean, it is, a very harsh environment, both in the summer and in the winter. It gets pretty cold out there. And the redwood that they originally used has, for the most part, started to go really bad. And, they've been replacing it over the years. At some point, they switched to cedar instead of redwood, but now they're going to full-on steel. And but overall, it's just, it doesn't compromise the space. It doesn't compromise the aesthetics. It doesn't compromise, everybody, I think everybody understands, and they know that this is for the greater good, to make it last. Um, and I should say there's even a night tour where you get to see kind of all of the design. And so when I say everything was considered, I mean, it was every single thing is designed there. It's really amazing. The doors, the hinges, just everything. And the way that the light is diffused into the spaces with canvas, and the way that, Frank is known for leaky buildings, right? And I think there, especially, in the springtime with the afternoon monsoons that happen, it's kind of expected, I'm sure, at some level. But the way that he worked the rain gutters into these roofs, and the way that he just did not design boxes, he did not encompass space in, they might be rectangular in plan, but they are not ever rectangular in section.
No,
for the most part. And it's. So I think it's a lot different than a lot of his other projects. It's a lot different than Falling Water from what I've seen. I haven't been there myself, but just the spaces are really not cubic in nature. And I think that there's something so interesting about that, and the way that he considered views when you're sitting versus standing, and the way that the rooms compress and I don't know what the right terms are, compress and explode. They're very tight and then they open, very Frank Lloyd Wright style.
Very, yeah.
So evident in so many spaces there, and so much level change, whether it's minor or not, just to differentiate spaces, and just so inspiring. And I think what it really inspired me to do was just build. I want to build with my own hands, and I also saw how he did it with the slave labor that we'll call students, in apprenticeships. It's a very different world back then. They paid to go to school there and worked their asses off, So it was definitely like we nowadays talk about unpaid internships, and we talk about equity, and we talk about all these things. And the issues back then were, these students were paying, I think it was like $400 for a term, and they got to live in a tent in the desert, and they got to help build Taliesin West. And that was the learn by doing attitude. But it really was. Frank would walk around in his wool suit and his hat and his cape a lot of times, and point at things with his cane and tell students what to build and what to make. And that doesn't say he would send students off to get a 2-person or a 4-person boulder, whatever size he needed to accomplish the thing that he did. And they would go off and get it and bring it back. And because it was all local materials, they would mix their own concrete and pour it. And it's a beautiful outcome. I can't imagine actually doing it though, especially in the environment that they were in. So, it was kind of just a really inspiring, but also me realizing, man, I really want to build, and then realizing what it actually takes to do all that building, and the labor that it takes to do it. Everybody knows construction's not easy, but
it sounded like he didn't have to pay a dime.
Right.
They pretty much paid for the construction of it. Maybe that's the gig you got to do, is you've got to convince people that, hey, you should pay me for my wisdom. And
yeah, he was the master, right? The master builder. Yeah. and what was interesting was the way that the timeline works out was that he got paid from doing Falling Water and turned that money around and bought the land to do Taliesin West at $3.50 an acre.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. And how many acres is the...
It's huge. It's like 850 acres. 620. Okay, so it's huge. They own a lot of land, and it has its own water. Obviously, they're pulling power from the grid, but it is a masterpiece. It really is. And what's interesting is to kind of hear the larger story of Frank Lloyd Wright, and how talking about the Imperial Hotel and the Guggenheim, and 532 built works and over 1,100 designed over his 70-year career. He bought Taliesin West land when he was 70. Wow. And then he built it over I don't know how many years. So it's pretty amazing story. And just to hear about how in 1991, when they did I mean, one of the big magazines or somebody did the most influential buildings in architecture ever, or the 100 most, and he had 12 of them on the list after everybody had tallied the votes. That's a pretty enormous impact on the profession. That's
pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So let me ask this, and I don't know if you got a lot out of your tour or not, but the students there, I mean, are they now, essentially like Frank Lloyd Wright preservationists? I mean, are they really learning, I mean, obviously they're not learning from him. They're just learning from, the second and third or possibly even fourth or at least third generation removed from him. And
I'm not sure how that's working, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious. I mean, if it's,
I know a little.
Like, are they, is it, what is the school? What does the school teach them? I mean, is it purely preservation of Frank Lloyd Wright works and, teaching who and what he was and all that other stuff, like you said, drinking the Kool-Aid, or are they really kind of like teaching, the next iteration of, what would be the new, a presumptive new philosophy of, Wrightian architecture in the modern age? I don't know if it sounds too academic there, but I mean,
well,
I'm curious.
I can tell you what I know, and people can write us and tell me what I say that's wrong right now. But basically, there are 24 students, I want to say. That might be a high number. And it's a master's degree. I believe it's 2 years. It's $43,000 a year, I believe.
He's still making money off of students.
And it is a full-on accredited master's degree program in architecture. So It's not preservation. There might be some of that in there. I have no idea. I looked in the studio. I saw models of towers. I saw models of all kinds of stuff. It's definitely not just talking about Frank Lloyd Wright. I believe that there is an office running out of that same or nearby studio as well, which is dedicated to that type of work, I believe. So they also have the option to live in the dwellings that the students either have built or do build out in the landscape on the acreage near the main campus. And all of the students who are there currently have elected to do so. So they live out in these little buildings that have been built, or maybe they build them themselves. I don't know. There's definitely some that have been there a really, really long time. There's no power. There's no water out there. And they spend half of their time at Taliesin West, from what I could gather, and half of their time in Chicago. So they move every 6 months, basically, between the two schools.
Well, that's interesting. So it's kind of, it almost sounds like it's the rural studio before the rural studio existed.
Yeah. I mean, they're not actively out doing the construction projects like rural studio is, from what I can gather, but they do have a studio environment, and they're doing, I would say it's a lot more like what I went to school in, that kind of a studio where it's crits and models and design and all that stuff. Now, I'm not sure about any other classes. I'm not sure about what the full curriculum is, because they're kind of, they're on their own site, and I have no idea how that works into any other kind of curriculum. So, for what it's worth.
Well, I mean, if it's a master's program, I'm sure it's just purely focused
for the most part,
on
just core studio.
Yeah,
could be. But as far as like structures and environmental control, I mean, maybe they do all that there in the studio. I mean, it's not that many students. It's not like they need different classrooms for that kind of stuff. So it could all just be happening right there.
So you say that there's like no power, or I mean, they
not out at their own little, not at the little dwellings that are kind of scattered throughout the site. There's plenty of power in the main buildings, so there was air conditioners cranking away for sure. But yeah, I mean, it seems like a really neat style of education, and I know that it wasn't too long ago that Aaron Betsky became the dean out there. So he was, so yeah, anyway, I heard him speak on the Archinect Sessions podcast about that. But there was a lot of question over whether it was going to remain accredited. It sounds like it has, and it sounds like it's doing pretty well. Anyway,
Kind of cool. I mean,
yeah.
I'd like to learn more. So if there's any listeners out there that know anything about it, I'd like to learn more.
Yeah, for sure. It just made me want to visit more. I mean, my wife was same. It's just like, oh, we got to get out. We got to do more of this. We got to do more of this with the kids, and we got to go see more stuff. And I feel like we do a pretty good job of that, but we can always go see more. We live near LA. I mean, there's so much to see here. We should do it. Anyway.
Yeah, and I took 2 or 3 summers ago. We decided to kind of like go on a after we do our kind of annual camping trip, we drove through northern Michigan and down through Wisconsin, and saw a couple of buildings within Wisconsin, and then drove to Chicago, and we kind of toured a couple of different places, Oak Park, walked around, as many houses as I could get out of them before they started complaining about being hungry, and I'm walking them to death, but I would say that, my kids at their ages of 17, 15, and 10 have probably seen far more Frank Lloyd Wright buildings, or even, significant architectural buildings, than I had through the first few years of my career.
Yeah. Same.
You sure they're happy about that?
They, you know what? I mean, here's the thing, and everybody always asks me, how do you get away with like visiting architecture with your kids? And if you make it fun for them, obviously you're going to have fun, but they're going to have fun too. And I've never, at least they have never said anything to me,
not out loud.
Not out loud, but most of the time they seem to be having fun. There are times where, when we're going to more historical places, like say Mount Vernon or something like that, where, they're like, history again. But, when it's coming to
old
like
stuff.
Yeah. But when it's like coming to like going to architecture, architecturally significant buildings and stuff, we seem to like have fun with it, make a game out of it, maybe, my oldest will like play the game that I'm always playing, which is let's find all the defects.
Nice.
But let's project manage this and see if they did a good job. No, yes, no. But no, we seem to be able to get around that. And how did your kids do it, Nate?
Who are you asking?
You.
Me? My kids did really well with this one. I'm trying to think of other ones that we've been to. I can't think of any complaints. So
I'll tell you that, like, probably of any and all of our trips and stuff, they still kind of rave about it and ask me if when we're going back, but they, loved Falling Water, and they loved the grounds. They loved going to the house itself. It's, I've been there twice, and, if they have their way, then, I'll be there a third time. Cause it's just cool. And there are some things for them to do. And now that they've kind of changed up they have a companion house that I visited the first time at Kentuck Knob was, one of the houses that I visited. And this other time they had one. But, my wife looked at it as like, we've got all 5 kids here. It costs an additional like $25 per person just to go to this extra house.
Right.
She's
expensive with the large family. Yeah.
She's just like, I don't think we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
we hit a bunch of other locations after this, and again, I don't think the kids really complained about it. So we're looking forward now to like getting out to Hollywood and going and seeing the Barnstable house, and The Hollyhock House, as most people know it. And then the Ennis Brown House is up there too in the hills. So, to go see some different styles of Frank Lloyd Wright that as he kind of progressed through his career, to see some textile block and
see, those are the ones that I haven't seen yet. And surprisingly enough, even though my sister lives in Phoenix, I'd never gone to Taliesin West.
Oh man, you got to.
So yeah, those are bucket list ones. I mean, I've got a lot. I mean, there's one actually. It's a family. It's, I guess, his great grandson or grandson who lives in Bethesda. But a few, like less than half a mile away from me. So there's a house. You don't see it from the street. It looks like two intersecting footballs, from the aerial view. But it's kind of interesting. And I think he did that actually later in his career. And his son Lloyd Wright, I guess, actually finished the house after his father's death. So, yeah, I mean, you make a game out of it, and they love it. And it sounds like you did, a lot of other things, like, I'll be the spoiler here, but like you went to the OK Corral.
We actually didn't even get down to the south. We ended up going north now because it didn't work out for our other plans. So we, from Taliesin, part of the key to making this all work is sprinkling your field trips with food outings. So go get lunch, then go do another tour, then go find a snack. And so we headed over, we went by, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Paolo Soleri.
Yeah.
He was born in Italy, Turin, Italy in 1919, and he apprenticed under Frank Lloyd Wright after he had come over to the U.S. And he ended up getting married and basically settling down in the Scottsdale area. So there's a lot of neat stuff going on out that way. There's also a lot of neat mid-century modern stuff going on out there. So we stopped at some really cool churches and some different projects that we just saw driving along the road. I had kind of asked on Twitter before we went, and people had a lot of great ideas. So that was really cool. But we just made a bunch of stops. But we went over to his home, Paolo Soleri's home, which is called Cosanti. And it's about 5 acres in Scottsdale, and it's surrounded by McMansions. But you can tell he's been there a lot longer. And it basically was his experimental proving grounds for a lot of his ideas. So he did a lot of silk cast thin shell concrete on site. It's very organic, and basically used a business where they would cast bronze and ceramic bells and use that to pay for his experimental architecture. And eventually got to the point where he was able to, he had won some huge grants, and he had done some larger projects. He actually went back to Italy for a time with his wife and did a ceramics factory it's pretty beautiful. Ended up coming back to the U.S. and basically it seems like he got this side business rolling, and again, kind of in the Frank Lloyd Wright style of slave labor of students, got a bunch of amazing stuff built. And I will say what's different about Paolo is that he was very involved in the hands-on construction himself. I mean, there's so many photos from what I can tell he was a maker, and he was out there with and it seems more like a lifestyle and a movement rather than an apprenticeship kind of a thing that Frank Lloyd Wright had going on. So I don't mean to make it sound like it was exactly the same, but in the same vein as students coming out and paying Frank to apprentice for him, that's pretty much what happened with Paolo too, out at his other development, which is about an hour north of Phoenix, and it's called Arcosanti. And that is a huge amount of land that he purchased and started developing a self-sustaining city on, and people could come and pay to live there and work there for a pretty nominal amount, and basically apprentice and learn what's called arcology, which is a combination of architecture and ecology. and it's all about self-sustaining architecture and density rather than sprawl. So it's really in response to what was happening in Phoenix at the time, in many cities around the world, where they're very horizontal, dependent on the car, and he was very much about densifying to an extreme amount, but also because of that, people sharing a lot of things and sharing living quarters as far, some parts of living, like kitchens and community spaces and things like that, and then having no cars at all. So moving walkways, escalator systems, stuff like that, but also, close proximity to basically farming and everything that you would need to sustain your small community within a much larger. And he had designed it all the way up to support about 5,000 people. He had designed several versions over the years and even decades. And he had gotten to the point where there was one that was about 5,000 people was kind of the number he was shooting for to be sustaining on. So his home became the experimental kind of construction grounds for different ideas of how to do that using local materials without heavy machinery, with trying to make it as simply constructible as possible. So it's a lot of cast in place concrete. It's a lot of using the desert silt that's right there to do so, and then building these pretty elaborate and beautiful structures that really do last a long time. So the ideas that are built into this are definitely sound. I mean, I went to Arcosanti 22 years ago, and I went to his home 22 years ago. I saw him jump into the pool in his leopard print Speedo. I mean, and they look the same today.
All right, I'm not going to have a link to that in the show notes.
It was an experience. It was cool. But it's the same as it was. I mean, it's maybe a little bit worse for wear, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just the same.
It's interesting, and I'm looking at a photo right now. Kind of like the main splash page of Archisani on Wikipedia, and looking at it and looking at how it's sprawling and developed, but it's kind of like carved in and out of the hill or the.
It's like on an edge of a canyon.
Yeah. I mean, you had talked about going to Chaco Canyon, and I see a lot of
indigenous inspiration.
Kind of exactly.
Totally.
Where it really kind of is something that's almost inherent to like Arizona, New Mexico, with all these cliff dwellings and stuff. I mean, if you think about it, Chaco Canyon was a really large settlement.
Huge. Right. Yeah.
And
pueblos are enormous.
Oh yeah, and
multi-story, yeah.
And I don't know. Have you ever been to Canyon de Chelly?
No.
Very similar. It's got cave dwellings and things like that, and carved out into the cliff sides and things like that. And these remind me as as kind of a maybe not modern day, but let's just call it modern day version of those things with self-sustaining, built with natural resources. I mean, it really is kind of, the modern, the modern Pueblo living.
He took a ton of inspiration from that. I think that was something that was so impressive about what he was able to pull off, was just the strong connection to the past that the indigenous people, like building off of what they had come up with and integrating those ideas into modern ideas. And I kind of walked away from it. We did a tour there, and so you get a tour from somebody who lives there. There's about 66 people living at Arcosanti right now, and it'll support up to about 100 at the current size. So just to, you said it was kind of sprawling across the edge of this thing, and just to give you an idea of scale, this is nowhere near the Grand Vision. Not even close. Right. This is a speck on the map of a crazy model that he had designed of the entire vision. And basically most of what they have today was built in an 8-year time span, when there was tons of development going on out there. There were tons of people interested in it, and they were all out there helping make it happen. And his wife died at one point. This is a story that the docent who gave us the tour, who lives out there currently, was telling us, was his wife died way before he got sick and died. He just died about 5 years ago. But that's basically when all the development stopped. And there has been a few construction projects since then, but for the most, when he was alive, but for the most part, it really slowed down after that initial boom. And it was really like, she was a huge part of that. I mean, much like Charles and Ray Eames were a partnership, and basically the stories that I heard about Frank Lloyd Wright and Olga Vanna, I mean, it was very much this relationship between this husband and wife that really made it happen. I mean, she injected so much into what Arcosanti was. And when she was gone, I think he just kind of lost the drive to build this city. I'm sure a lot of it was for her. And then when he passed away, it's now, to me, and I don't live there, and this might sound, I don't know, like I'm reading into it too much, but it seems like that vision, while everybody who goes there definitely supports the vision and loves the vision and wants to be a part of it, I don't see how it's possible without him. And so I think that's what's kind of the saddest thing about it. I said on my Instagram post, where I just posted kind of a picture of the entry, it's overall, it's kind of a sad place. And so some people ask why the sadness? And to me, it's more sad just that it doesn't have what it once had. It doesn't have that lifeblood coursing through it every day. And the vision, I don't think, will ever be realized. I mean, the local city has its hooks now in with inspecting every little thing that goes on out there, as they do everywhere. We all have to deal with this as architects. But they're talking about having to do fire suppression in all the buildings. I mean, that alone is an enormous expense. They have to pave the road to get there so that the fire department doesn't have to drive down the dirt road to get there. So there's all of these kind of expenses up front before they can do another major building project. And just that alone, I mean, something that our docent said was, Paolo was a proud Italian. He never took a dime from anybody. And so when that culture has been ingrained into Arcosanti and Cosanti for so long, it's really hard to step out of that and take on outside investment, which is really what it would take, a huge influx of capital to make any of this happen. It's not going to happen off the sale of bells. I mean, maybe our podcast can really help sell some bells here, but I don't think it's going to make a dent in the overall idea of what Arcosanti's vision, the vision of that community really was, or to some extent still is. But that to me is kind of the saddest thing, is that the vision is never going to be fully realized. And I think that's just kind of like the practicality of the whole thing. So that to me kind of, it sucks. And what's interesting is, in 22 years, I can't really point out anything that's changed there. I'm sure some small things have, but overall it's kind of the same place. And now they just kind of host festivals and retreats and all these different things. It basically has become a venue for keeping itself alive throughout the years, but I don't see it ever getting the capital that it really takes to do some major development out there and become self-sustaining. They run off the city grid for electricity. They would have to double the size of their evaporation area out there for the waste. There's so many things that need to happen. I mean, it's a huge investment. So that kind of sucks. But I mean, it's an impressive thing. I mean, I can't imagine having a vision that big and really going for it for as long as they did, and some of them still are. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Not to be the downer, but it looks like it might be destined to be another Arizona ruin.
It's going to be an amazing ghost town one day. I hope it doesn't happen anytime soon. But yeah, it is a harsh environment. I mean, don't forget that part as well, right? Like they can only work on it so much out of the year anyway.
Right.
So
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it gets 120 out there, so you don't want to be there when that happens. But there are families who live there year round. There's families who've lived there for 25 years, raised kids there. I mean, that's all they've ever known. It is their home. So on some levels, it definitely is successful. So
Evan, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You've seen a couple of amazing places, several amazing places, and you've spent most of the episode talking about the things that you've seen and what some of the very interesting things are about the things that you've seen. How do you then process that and then bring it back to what you're doing today? in your, in your work?
I think the biggest part of it for me, I'm fairly busy the whole time, kind of listening to the stories and photographing it so that I can bring these ideas back, and I make an effort to present them to the group that I work with. And to me, like, that act of trying to pass those ideas along and those images along really helps me process it, but it also helps other people get hopefully excited about it as well. And excited about something that we're not doing. I mean, it's just something that we're talking about. We're talking about the ideas, the forms, what it took to do it, the dedication, all those interesting kind of side stories to the main idea. And but for me personally, I come away from those places super energized. And so I think that part of the reason I go is to get that back. And I feel like, especially after visiting these two projects, or these three projects, Koh-Santi, Archispeak, and Taliesin West, the whole idea of organic architecture from that kind of a standpoint, not swoopy organic architecture, but architecture of context and materiality and sustainability, I think that those are the things that I really needed right now. And it makes me feel like, I mean, this is something you guys can probably relate to. Like, we sequence boxes from entry to the other end where the fire exit is, and they're very efficient, and they're all of the same volume, width, length, and height, right? They are, and to me, like, what was so interesting about these spaces that I visited they were interesting in so many ways that we learned about when we were in school. Sectionally, playfulness, design down to every little element, the doorknob, everything down to the doorknob is designed. And I feel like a lot of our architecture does not possess that kind of thoughtfulness. And so to me, whether it's in, what can I do to bring that back to what I do on a daily basis? What can I do to plan buildings out like that? What can I do to have people have experiences like I just had? Because buildings are meant to look at, but architecture is meant to be experienced, right? And so this is what I got to do that, and I want to bring that to other people. And that to me really energizes me in the projects that I want to bring that to my projects. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like there are some actual ways to do that. And for me, it's through sharing. But I also want to do it through doing myself, actually making that stuff. And like I said, like, I want to just do that at my house. I'm so disappointed in the spaces that I live in. What can I do here that would start to make me enjoy this place more like I enjoyed those places?
Well, and it's the experience behind all of that, bringing it back, sharing it not only as a story to your colleagues that, would appreciate it, but, you're also sharing it with your children and things like that, as we were talking earlier. Mm-hmm. And these are influences of, them understanding, as well as your colleagues understanding, kind of like the value of space and the value of place. And so, being able to document and kind of immerse yourself is, as much as you can in, the experience of being there, and then passing it on to someone else. I mean, the value of the story is equally as, kind of profound as, just like is being there, because you're trying, like I've been kind of captivated by listening to the story of your experience there, kind of flipping through images of Archispeak, and while I'm listening to you talk about it, and thankfully I've got the power of the internet, so I'm not having to just visualize this, but being out in some of the other places that you visited and kind of understanding that, and then seeing this, and just kind of you start to understand, you're bringing a good passion to the way that you're telling about your experience and your story, that I'm like, I I need to go see it now, or I need to go experience places like this. So that, you can kind of enrich, go back to what Neil was saying is, how do you enrich your own, design sensibilities or your own like architecture from that? And I think it really is, sharing the joy, like the seed starts with sharing the joy of like your experience with it with other people. And then those other people want to go and, have, shared experiences or like experiences. And then you can, it just kind of like goes from there. And that's all you really can do, right? It's.
I think that I can't stress enough how important it is to actually experience the architecture yourself and bring people along, drag them along. But that adds so much enrichment to how you think about things and how you express them later on that you cannot get through a two-dimensional surface, whether it's a screen or a magazine or whatever. So it doesn't matter how many times you flip through ArcDaily, you're not going to get that same feeling or experience or understand the light or the view or so many things that we miss out on that you get when you go visit it in a physical way.
Well, I was, today we've had our ACE mentoring, and I was sitting around. We're kind of in the throes of wrapping up kind of the design project that they've got to work on and getting them to the point where they've got, graphics ready for, assembling the presentation and giving their end of year presentation for potential scholarships. And, we were talking about, I was helping the landscape group, because we've kind of broken it up into landscape and civil engineering, architecture, structural engineering, and then mechanical and electrical engineering. And then we even have a component for, contracting. And so, we have mentors come in and kind of talk to each of the kids who have interest in those specialities. And one of the great things is, I'm sitting there and I'm working with the landscape group more because the landscape guy that was there last week, he wasn't there this week, and so we were trying to advance the design a little bit more. And so, not knowing anything about the project that they've been or at least the aspect of the project they've been working on, I'm trying to like get them to talk about it. And they were having a really hard time kind of like, obviously they're, high school kids, and they're having a hard time kind of verbalizing what the concept and the idea was behind what they were doing. I mean, they've got a sketch out there, and I'm trying to like, distill it from them. So one of the things that I did to kind of help them with that is talk about like local areas that are similar to, the areas, the things that they're they're trying to do in the project that I think that they might have visited, and so I'm trying to like connect what they're doing with an experience of a place they've already been and see how that kind of works. And it really helped because it really kind of said, oh yeah. And, a couple of kids have visited Europe, and, they were talking about, this, or they've been to New York City, and so we were like going back and forth because it's this urban, intervention into kind of a more of a urban suburban kind of development in one of the suburbs outside of Baltimore. And, the area's got a little bit more of an urban flavor to it, but they're trying to layer, like plazas and things like that over the top of it. And it's really kind of an interesting idea that we're working with, but to try to get them to understand what how to verbalize it or vocalize what their ideas were, I had to like really kind of pull from them their own experiences in other places to get them to like start thinking about, oh yeah, and that's I wanted to do this because I might have seen it here or there, and I think the beauty of you visiting these places and sharing it with us, and once we hit send on this recording and everybody else gets to hear it, hopefully they kind of get that kind of almost same energy of like, thinking about and sharing the experiences of of places like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've talked too much.
Didn't you say you went to Chaco Canyon?
We didn't this trip, but we have. I've been there twice now. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's one of those spaces that it's unbelievable when you're there. It has much more powerful effect on me than even places like the Grand Canyon, because it's, oh man, like you can just wander those spaces, those little spaces with keyhole doorways and light shafts, and you can go up on the cliff above and look down on it, and the way that they used the sun, and there's so much going on there. It's amazing, and it was such a amazing thing for how many years ago? 2,500, 3,000, I don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's been forever. It's interesting because when I was there, it was a weird time in my life. Had just dropped out of architecture school, after third year, and ran out of money. Was kind of wandering around, and I was sharing this story with my son. It was interesting as when we were driving around this weekend, going to car shows and stuff like that. We had started with going to a little car show in DC, and kind of turned out to sort of be a bust because it was only 5 cars, but they were historically significant cars. I mean, it was as weird as it sounds, and they were actually kind of enamored with it. Is the very first Dodge Caravan. It was like they called it the Magic Wagon #1.
How funny!
And but it was the very first one to roll off the line, and it was still in perfect condition for its age. And then they had like the 15th millionth Ford that was built, which was amazing because it was a Model T, or sorry, a Model A.
Wow,
15 million in that early years of the car was just exceptional. And then they had the basically what was the predecessor to the Jeeps, was this old kind of like open open carriage type design, and it was pretty amazing. And to look at some of the technological innovations that they had on this car, like it was one of the early introductions of the true leaf spring and things like that, and it was just it was pretty amazing. And then sitting right next to that was the Ferris Bueller Ferrari, and it was the one that they used in the movie. And then there was one more movie car, which was, I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but they just recently rediscovered the Ford Mustang from the movie Bullitt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's in rough shape, but they're preserving it to basically where it is now.
Right.
And so it was really interesting that they had both the car itself on display, but then they also had the kind of like the history of how the car was used in the movie. Then it was sold to a family, and then they owned it for a while, and then it just kind of disappeared for a few decades, and then was recently rediscovered as a barn find. And they're like, wait, that kind of looks like the car from the movie. And sure enough, it was the car from the movie. And it was so there's the historic significance of being a Steve McQueen car. But as we were sitting there talking about it, and then we were trying to see if we could find a couple of other local car shows, and we found the one with the Pantera and all those other ones. We were talking about my road trip that took me across country when I dropped out of school. I did my old crappy 1980 Triumph TR7 that had 3 cylinders, and was not roadworthy at all to make this drive. And, I was talking to them about like, all of my experiences and trials and tribulations as I was like driving out to visit my sister in Arizona. And the thing about, I started to tell them about like the side journeys that I was taking, like Chaco Canyon and Canyon de Chelly and things like that. And, how, the most amazing thing that I saw, at Canyon de Chelly, let's just say I was somewhat of a Bedouin at this time. And I was a self-imposed homeless.
Yeah.
Is an easy way to explain it. And where I, basically was just, it was an interesting time in my life, like I said, as I, quit school. And so I was just wandering, and I wandered for quite a long time, actually, like several months. And I like lived illegally in Canyon de Chelly and Chaco Canyon and a few other places that I could basically sneak into and avoid being detected by the park rangers.
Yeah.
And, and use their facilities and all that other stuff. But, the thing that I liked the most about it, and only now, with you talking about Archispeak, am I hearkening back to like, what real architectural significance these places had, for me in a time when I really, I was trying to almost avoid architecture because, I almost felt at that point in time that I was done with school, and, what's the next chapter? What else am I going to do? And, and then to kind of like pull it back and, looking at these images that I'm looking at right now of Archispeak and listening to your stories and then likening them to, these Native American things. I mean, it's kind of an interesting, it's funny as much as you didn't know that you were on a journey to like help me rediscover some things. That's what I'm saying. The power of that story is all about.
That's
man.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely was feeling it after 22 years too. So it was neat.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it and they're kind of old and haggard buildings, and, they're, it looks like they're, just have seen better days, but you can see the inspiration. And, I'm looking at, the photographs of, what is it? Bear with me here when I, the Archispeak asp.
Oh, the apps.
Apps.
Yeah. It's like a quarter sphere. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting about that is you can see a very Italian kind of response, but you can also see a very like New World Native American kind of feel to it.
Right.
So, he's really brought like old world thought to the new world, but even kind of reached back to ancient New World.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, it was awesome. So I think our listeners should chime in and tell us if they've been to these spots, or where are they
Where do
most
they find
excited
inspiration?
about? Yeah, where are they finding their inspirations from? That'd be cool. So write us, tweet us, tell us on Facebook, all the spots. Hit us up in the comments on this episode.
And if you've been out to either Taliesin West, or I know of a few friends of ours that listen to the show who frequent, main campus Taliesin, do you share similar feelings and experiences? I couldn't see how you can't. Yeah. I mean, these are just, some amazing places. And what is everybody else's amazing place?
So many choices. Well, we talked this one to death.
I believe we did.
All right.
Then I guess that's all that's left, is to thank all of our sponsors, of which we have Arcat for this episode, and remind everybody that the music that you hear on this episode is by System Kid. Subscribe to Archispeak on Apple Podcasts, or listen directly from our site at archispeakpodcast.com, where you can stream or download every episode and find links to all the things we mentioned. In fact, several really interesting ones this time. So make sure you check your email, sign up for that newsletter that we send out when the episode goes live. And definitely check out all of our social media on either Twitter or Facebook. And I will have links in there to our Instagram account so you can see some of the things that we posted over our trips this past weekend. Or you can email us, let us know. Links to all of this can be found at archispeakpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, everyone, and stay subscribed. We'll catch you next time.
Get inspired. See ya.
What he said.
Yeah.
drawing straws and pails. Me hard, I'm caught in a phone booth on the beach. You reach for your gun. Do I watch or run, or will someone call 911? Please, you were everything I wanted and more. Oh, and everything was magic and more. Went overboard. You beat your babies for needing you. Still, you hunger to conceive. A brand new pup might cuddle up, but he won't be enough. Your greed, I'm caught in a phone booth on the beach. You reach for your gun. Do I watch or run, or will someone call 911? Please, you were everything they needed and more. Oh, and everything was magic, but more. Went overboard. I hate the way that you lied to me. Still, I love you anyway. Because you tell me every little thing's gonna be